We see some funny and weird things coming out of Nepal. Suddenly, Nepalese PM Balen Shah puts out tariffs on India. Suddenly, after that, he starts raising up the Lipulekh issue. He writes to China and India both that you cannot be using Lipulekh for your Kailash Mansarovar Yatra. What's taking place? It's a bit confusing. From the initial warmth with India, suddenly this hostility. I won't really call it hostility, but I'll call it a little bit of strategic pragmatism or a strategic risk taking sort of an approach. Is that so, or is there something else playing within? Let's talk. Namaskar, Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, and welcome to Dev Talks. Nepal is a very interesting example of looking at how a country basically reacts when he's trying to kind of stabilize himself. He's trying to create a different narrative within his country. Balen Shah is trying a very specific political, operating in a very specific political space inside Nepal, where anti-establishment nationalism mixed with urban popularism and a defiance to the so-called big powers around the place, including America, by the way, is seen as strength as far as his politics is concerned. What you're seeing is a less coherent grand strategy where a more balancing sort of an act is being trying to be played between the five big power centers that impact Nepal. One is the Nepalese army and the old state system, the bureaucracy as well as the monarchy and the previous leadership as well as the politicians. Then you also have India, then you have China, and of course you have the Americans. Then you also have the Nepalese nationalist sentiment, which is actually building up quite a bit. This election was fought on that nationalist sort of a sentiment. The problem is that he's no longer behaving like a mayor. He's positioning himself as a national voice, and there's a deeper pattern that needs to be understood here. He started off with this whole nonsense about tariffs, where he put these, tariffs on 100 rupee plus items that were coming across the border between India and Nepal. People were getting really, really upset about it because a lot of Nepalese depend on the markets in India to purchase their daily use commodities. They also need these are trade routes, fuel logistics. There is of course banking. There is labor flows. All sorts of things happen between the two countries, and which has been traditionally allowed by India because it considers Nepal as not a part of itself, but a very close brother sort of a country, where a little bit of an extra leeway is allowed where the Nepalese people come and join. They are free to come and work in India, and all sorts of things were always allowed within India and between India and Nepal. Nepal's economy remains deeply India linked. There's just no question about it. The fuel comes from here, the medicine comes from here, the ports are here, the food chains are here, the remittances are here, the electricity balancing is coming from here, transit access comes from here. So if Balen Shah pushes too aggressively, Nepal suddenly experiences a lot of friction, slower movement, tariff retaliation, fuel constraints, and that's exactly what India did. When this whole nonsense of tariffs came across, what India did was India said, all right, if that is the case, all right, no Nepalese car will be given fuel over 100 rupees. So what happened was, when they used to come here, they could not fill a fuel, and that's something that's a big challenge. So a lot of the border area, the people who use transportation and all that, they just drive into India, fill up their cars, fill up their petrol, and then drive back over there because it's cheaper here, and of course the availability is not much of a challenge. Uh, Kathmandu bureaucracy really got a shock with this particular thing, and you could see they pressured Balen Shah for a rollback, and that's exactly what happened within 2 days of this entire nonsense actually opening up. When many Nepali nationalist leaders escalate rhetorically, which is something that we've seen in the past, they don't actually take it forward operationally, right? So it's just chest beating and stuff like that. So it's been understood like that, and we've kind of accepted it and said, all right, this is how their politics works. It's perfectly all right. Lipulekh came up. Nepalese Prime Minister wrote a letter to both India and China and said you cannot be using the Lipulekh pass for your Kailash Mansarovar Yatra. And what we saw is both the countries, India and China, basically rubbished it and didn't even respond to it. This they link it together with the sovereignty. They link it together with historical humiliation narratives, border nationalism, and of course territorial integrity. Every Nepali politician eventually touches on this issue because it creates a certain amount of legitimacy for himself. When you kind of bark at the biggest dog in the neighborhood, you do get a little, legitimacy yourself. And he barked at both the biggest dogs in the neighborhood. One is India, and second is China. He's trying to occupy that nationalist lane. Traditionally, parties used to claim it, but then they would come and settle it with India quietly and this and that. He's not wanting to do that at all. He's refusing to meet people. Now he's not just refusing to meet Indian representatives, he's also refusing to meet American representatives. He's basically sending a message to his I would, say that the loud urban youth, which may not be completely informed about how the world works, he's trying to say that he's not owned by Delhi, Beijing, or Washington. He politically, it's quite viable at the moment because of the whole protest that happened, which created a whole nationalistic fervor amongst the Gen Z in Nepal. And we saw how that entire game actually came across. We saw how post the protest, what we saw was a Discord page which was basically running Nepal and the activities within Nepal. It was quite funny the way the whole thing opened up, but it's their country. That's them for them to decide. Nepal's youth, and rightly so, I support them in this. They are very frustrated with the dynastic politics, the corruption, the foreign influence, the dependency that they've got. It is quite frustrating because they've not been able to kind of build up their own country because of the fact that their politicians were sold to one person to the other. We all know the stories of KP Sharma Oli and the Chinese uh, ambassador or diplomat or whoever that lady was, and what all sordid stories were coming out about their personal relationship, and she being some sort of a honey trap, and all sorts of things at that time came out. China is, role here is very complicated because China benefits when India and Nepal are not in kind of a sort of a not in a great place. But China also kind of doesn't like instability in Nepal because it creates a lot of problem for them, and because instability creates space for the Americans to come inside there and bribe their way through and get their stuff done. So China feels a little awkward when something like this happens. Remember, a lot of us think that China would love the chaos and love the pressure on India and everything like that. While that being true, the chaos creates opportunity for other people to actually infiltrate the Nepalese politics and create the opportunity for anti-China spying, the work within Tibet and all sorts of things. And please understand, the Americans passed in 2020 what is known as the Tibet policy, right? There were two things that were passed. One is Burma 2020 and Tibet 2020. So they passed this out during just at, I think, end of the Trump term and stuff. So there is a different policy that they're trying to figure out, and they want to, poke holes within Tibet, and that's something that we can see in a lot of the talks which are actually taking place within America. So the Chinese are aware of this, right? So, and now here is another thing: the Chinese also want to make good with India to a certain thing because they don't want that friction. They know they have a lot of friction on the other side. The Japanese are building up. They don't want a sort of a situation with India. Beyond the fact of Pakistan, they don't want that. So they wanting to make nice with India. So you will find that the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra, direct flights, all sorts of stuff, which is being pushed by China itself. No, no, no. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's not have our border issues. Let's keep it separate. And while we are not keeping it separate, but we are doing certain amount of things with not completely open, but we are doing. They wanted a completely open market for them to invest. We put 10%. This thing, no. So there's minor cooperation and coordination between the two countries, which is of course very valid. China is a big power. India is a big power. They're big markets. They've got their products to sell. There's a lot of trade between the two countries, which is pretty understandable. And nobody really wants all-out war between China and India, especially on Nepal. So, what's happening is that the American Foreign Minister Sergio Gore was supposed to go there. Balen Shah refused. There was talks about our Foreign Secretary, Ambassador Vijay, who was supposed to go there. He's not wanting to meet there. So he's basically trying to portray an image that I am the bigger leader. I need to meet my counterparts and stuff like that. Otherwise, I'm not going to sit here. But he faced quite a lot of backlash, as a matter of fact, with his Home Minister Sudhan Gurung. Lost his office, who resigned on corruption charges. Where I guess this whole hubris that Balen Shah has got, that he can pretty much do anything he wants to, played back and smacked him back as far as the Nepalese politics is concerned. Parliament is full of voices like him who are saying, "Oh no, you must stay strong with India, with this." Yeah, yeah, that whole thing is actually taking place, which is a little weird to me because they need India, especially in this tumultuous sort of a geopolitical environment which is actually around right now, because you have shortages of fuel, shortages of food, all sorts of things which are taking place, and this is only going to get worse. So you will find him backing down in the future, and India is going to take its time and wait and watch. Uh, the Balen is trying to build a nationalistic leadership image for himself. He's trying to create a sovereignty brand around himself. He's trying to create a strategic ambiguity, not fully pro India, not fully pro China, not fully pro US, which is managed very carefully on the ground on social media, and he's projected as a very strong leader and everything like that, because that's what is going to keep, at the end of it, keeping him in power. He's not being going to be able to stay in power if he cows down to any of these three powers at the moment, because he basically fought on that particular narrative itself. But there's a certain risk that Balen is, underestimating, overestimating, whatever you figure it out. Symbolic nationalism is not going to get you through, because the capacity of Nepal to kind of, you know, to sustain itself is not that strong. Nepal can politically antagonize India, yes, there's no question about it. But beyond crossing a certain line will create a huge challenge for Nepal, because the blowback will come. There's just no question about it. India will be tolerant to a certain extent, as is been with its neighbors, but the blowback, once it comes, it creates a problem. Like a small little stoppage of fuel, and it created a pushback within Nepal, and oh, stop, 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 and everything kind of came to an end. So then he started another issue, which is Lipulekh issue, knowing very well that the retaliation could come in again, in a very different way. It will not be on the same lines before. So he's probably, kind of bracing in for the retaliation and seeing what could come. While I don't think there's going to be any retaliation coming across from Indian side, it's an interesting story where he's trying to project himself as a nationalist leader and stand guard of Nepal. But with the kind of situation that the global order is in, ignoring India may not be his best choice. Let's wait and watch. It's going to be fun to watch, if I may say that. And to all my Nepalese friends, there's nothing against you, but this is just a analysis of your state policy. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share this with your friends and families. And of course, if you can, do support the channel as well. Join our groups, and I shall see you back. Till then, Namaskar, Jai Hind, Jai Bharat.